Okay, thank you. Wait a second. Sorry, I'm putting on the report. Um, so speaking from your knowledge and experience, what do you think is the relation between people's happiness with their income?
Between happiness and their income,
Yes.
I would say there's not always a strong connection there at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think people's happiness for many reasons comes from a lot of different things, and money and their income is maybe plays a small part in that, but it's certainly not the driving force in their happiness.
Mm. And there is a research conducted by two Princeton professors in 2010, which said that 75,000 as an annual income is like a threshold above
Right.
which, yeah, you have read that research.
I've heard of that and I have seen that.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, income beyond that amount, from what I understand, really doesn't add a whole lot to people's happiness.
Yeah, but what if it's below that amount? Like, what I do agree with that research.
Well, if it is below that amount, yes, then I can see where financial uh, means does come into play in terms of people's happiness. Absolutely. There's
Mm.
been a lot of studies that have been done, for example, that show that stress, for example,
Mm.
from financial concerns, in other words, people that cannot pay their bills, things like that, that are really struggling at
Mm.
the low end of the financial scale, so to
Mm.
speak, that increases the risk of someone having a heart attack by like 13 times.
Mm.
So
And mhm.
financial stress for people at the low end of the income scale
Mhm.
is very real and very much impacts their lives and their health.
Mhm. But is this $75,000 a correct threshold? As you, yeah.
Um, Whether or not that's the exact number, I don't know. I do
Mm.
think that's probably the minimum where people start to feel more comfortable when
Mm.
they're making that kind of money. And
Mm.
again, it depends too on, where they live, what kind of obligations they have, what kind of home they own, whether they rent, things like that. So I would say it's probably somewhat very individualized.
Mm. So, what are the factors that may influence people's perception of money or their way of dealing with money?
What other perceptions?
Yeah.
I'm not sure,
No.
I don't understand the question.
What are the factors that may influence, that may like impact their ways of dealing with money and their way of thinking of money?
Well, I think certainly for a lot of people, it's their level of education,
Mm.
what they've been taught about money. Unfortunately, in our education system, we really don't teach people how to handle money.
Mm.
We teach them how to make money,
Mm.
how to have a career to make income,
Mm.
but we really don't teach them about what to do with the money that they earn and
Mm.
how to make wise financial decisions. So I think a large factor many times in people's happiness is how well they have handled the money that they do earn.
Mm.
Somebody can be making the same amount of money as somebody else, and if they're not in a lot of debt and they can pay their bills every month and
Mm.
save something for the future, they're probably much happier than somebody who's struggling at the same level of income just to pay their credit cards, for example.
So education, and what about families' impact?
Certainly, family situations are going to impact people's financial situation. Depending on how many people, for example, someone is trying to financially provide for,
Mm.
um, or situations where children leave the home and then come back because they've had financial difficulties. That absolutely affects people's happiness in terms of money.
Mm. And Yeah, from your advising career, like speaking, what kind of people tend to be better at money management? Like they may make budget. Like what kind of people are
I would
mm,
say for the most part, people, for example, many times who are very organized,
mm,
very structured, people that track where their money goes tends to be oftentimes people that have, some self-discipline in
mm,
life.
mm,
In general, those are the people that usually are the ones that track what they do with their money and where it goes. And that's usually the starting point for being financially successful in life,
mm.
is understanding, what you're doing with your resources and not just spending money, unconsciously on everything that comes along. I
So
think also sometimes people are successful financially,
mm,
not always, but many times when they come from perhaps a little means to start with. They've come from families that don't have a lot of money, and they've had
oh
to earn their own money, and they've had to save their own money
mm,
because nothing has been given to them.
mm,
Many times they can become very successful because when they do start to get more education, get more income, they're not as easily attracted into necessarily, I've got to have that bigger house, I've got to have that new car, I've got to, if they don't have that mindset and they're just used to living at a certain level and
mm,
content at that level, as
mm.
their income goes up, many times they have disposable income that they can then turn into savings for the future or investment portfolios.
Mm. Thank you for your detailed explanation. I really appreciate that.
Does that answer the question somewhat for you?
Yeah. It's very good answers, I think. But
I think many
mm-hmm,
times people get very caught up in dealing with, having more and having better, and we find it becomes very difficult when people have become used to a certain standard of living, that if something happens and they experience some type of financial reversal, it
mm,
becomes very hard for them to downsize their lifestyle, so to speak, and
mm.
go back to living maybe in a neighborhood that they originally came from that's cheaper, or where they're not constantly trying to keep up with everybody around them.
Mm, yeah, and then they may start to change, like after encountering such financial difficulties.
Yes, some people do change and are content making those changes, but
Mm,
oftentimes people that have gotten used to a certain status or a certain
mm,
lifestyle find it very, very difficult to then have to settle, or they feel they're settling, but have to take a step back and perhaps live in a less expensive neighborhood
mm.
or drive a less expensive automobile. It becomes hard for them to do that sometimes when they've gotten used to things at a much higher level.
Yes, and yeah, and when you saw that some people when they came from not so well off families, they tend to be more frugal and they tend to have a better sense of saving money. But I feel like some people that I talk to, they come from the family that are very like kind of poor, but then they
Hmm.
start to think like, well, I have been in the at the bottom. I have been living in a state without money, so they tend to have like a careless attitude. They just don't care, because
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we see that too. Some people that do come from, minimal means to start
Mm,
with, when they do start to earn income, they suddenly start to say, oh, wow, now I can afford this and now I can
yeah.
afford that. And they say, well, I'm not going to live the way that I was brought up, or I deserve better. And then they start, ratcheting up their spending, and oftentimes that can lead to challenges in the future, particularly if they're not saving for future events. I mean, one of the things that we know happens to people every single day, I mean, is that there are going to be times in life where you're going to have financial setbacks. Maybe you're going to lose a job. Maybe you're going to get sick. Maybe somebody in the family is going to get ill. Just different things. You're going to buy an investment and it's going to go down, and you're not going to be able to recover what you invested. I mean, there's a variety of different things that can happen in the course of life that just happen to people. Not because they did anything wrong. It's life. It's part of life. And if you don't have something saved or something put away or some type of safety net or cushion when those things happen, people can be completely wiped out or end up in bankruptcy, or and it just puts so much more stress on them going through those situations. You're dealing with somebody who's maybe in the family who's already ill. You're already focused on that. That's already stressful. And then, if the finances take a downward turn at the same time and you have nothing to fall back on, it's even doubly more stressful. And it's so sad to see people go through that. But the issue is, in life, you're always going to have, usually, unless you're somehow very, very fortunate, you're going to have setbacks in life. And you have to be prepared for those. You can't just spend everything you make today and not think that those things are never going to happen to you. Because they do.
That's why we need a financial advisor.
Exactly. So, I mean, again, life happens. Things happen. People buy houses and then they can't sell them, or, just things happen in life and things change. And you always have to have something to kind of fall back on and be prepared for, as best you can, for some of those events.
Yes. Thank you so much. And if it's like school website, because our school has a new site, does it count as it? Yeah. Do you mind if I quote you?
Sure, that's fine. I just don't want it to be in some
major
major publication or something like that. No. That's all I was saying.
I don't think my article.
I don't want to be in Newsweek or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think my article will land.
But yes, I'm happy to. Yeah, it's interesting because people. It's interesting how people change over time and how they make decisions, and it's I have one client who's very successful at finances and very well controlled with their finances, and he happens to have a hobby where he's a statistician for a sports team. So he's used to keeping track of all the numbers for the sports team. So you can imagine what he does with his finances. He keeps track of everything. That's just how he is.
And he never gets tired.
And I think the people that keep track of things and are conscious of what they're doing with their money are the people that are usually successful. You can make a choice like, I'm going to go on a big trip and I'm going to spend a lot of money, but then usually those are the people that have made very conscious decisions every single day. I'm going to bring my lunch for a year. I'm going to not buy that coffee. I'm going to do different things so that I can save up that money and go on that trip.
And some young people, do you think like with the age grows up, people tend to be more cautious about spending? Because some young people may think, I'm still young, why should I care about like what I'm going to do after I retire, like decades later?
It is hard for people to understand, I think, when they're young, that time goes by so quickly. And if you can save even a little bit of money while you're young, it makes a huge difference compared to starting to save when you are older. All the numbers, I mean, the compounding is unbelievable. Even if you just start saving a little bit today. I know retirement seems like it's so far away and that it will never come, but it'll be there before you know it. Life goes by in a blink of an eye. It really does.
Mm.
You know, I'm sitting here right now, and I can't believe we're almost to May. Where did the first 4 months of the year go? I don't even know. You
Buried in
know,
the snow.
time goes by quickly, and you wake up one day and you say, what happened to the last 20 years of my life? I
Oh.
didn't do anything. I didn't save anything. I didn't put anything away for the future. And I have never heard anybody who's walked into my office and said, I'm being forced to retire, or I have to retire, or something like that.
Mm.
Darn it, I saved too much money. Nobody ever says that. Everybody sits there and we look at the numbers and we go, dang, I wish I would have saved more money.
Oh.
That's what I hear from every single person.
And,
Nobody ever tells me I saved too much.
and they don't want
Boy,
to
I
retire.
wish I would have spent more. but 9 times out of 10, they're sitting there saying, wow, I wish I would have saved more.
And is that they cannot retire because they haven't saved enough?
A lot of times we have to deliver news to clients all the time that are in their 60s and 70s, and maybe they've lost their job, and we have to tell them, you've got to go find something else to do because you don't have enough money to retire on. And that's a really difficult conversation to have with people. But we have those conversations all the time.
What do you mean? Do you mean at their original job, they don't have enough saving in their retirement plan, so that they have to find another job?
Exactly. I've got clients I've had to tell them at 70 years old, you need to go find a job at Walmart or Home Depot or something because you don't have enough money to retire on. So many clients today do not understand that, like I said, retirement will come very quickly. The amount of money that you need to save if you're going to have a portfolio to live on is huge. I mean, if you want to, people will say to me today, well, I have $1 million saved. That sounds like a lot of money. But $1 million, if you're going to live off of that for 30 years, means you'll probably be able to spend about $40,000 a year.
That's
not a lot.
Yeah.
And if you add up what it's going to cost for your medical care as you get older and all that, and your housing and everything, most people can't make it on $1 million. They just can't do it. And I'm not talking about people that live in mansions and have, fancy cars. I'm just talking about the everyday person. They can't live on $40,000 a year. And most of them don't have pensions anymore. And they don't understand that if you don't start doing something and saving something early, it becomes very hard to make up ground later on.
Yeah, it's a really...
You missed an opportunity to invest when you're young, and you can't get that back. It becomes much more difficult. You have to save much more at 30, and then much more at 40, and much more at 50 than you do when you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
And again, it's all about planning and thinking ahead, and it may seem like it's futile when you're young, or I've got other priorities, I'd rather travel, I'd rather buy a new car, whatever it is. But like I said, I've never gotten to the point where somebody said, man, I should have, instead of spending my bonus, I should have saved it. That's what they always say at retirement. I had extra money come my way from various things, and I didn't put it away. I didn't save some of it. Boy, do I regret that decision. I mean, my husband has had major health issues, and he was forced to retire just fairly recently, and he's 60 years old, and he's had a stroke and whatnot, and he's had to go back out and get a job because his $30,000 a year pension isn't going to cut it.
Is what? Sorry?
His $30,000 a year pension is not enough to retire on.
Oh.
by the time he pays his medical costs and whatnot.
That's heavy.
And so at 60 years old, he's out there working midnights to get a job. And this is the reality of what happens when people don't save for retirement.
Yeah.
It's sad, but it's the truth. And the worst place to be in the United States is being old, having poor health, and having no money.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Those are the most. Those are the people that suffer the most from depression and all that kind of thing, because they've lived their lives and they are at the end of their lives and they have no health, no money, can't do anything, can't pay their bills. They're stressed out about what's going to happen to Social Security, and it's sad. And if you look at how much money they made over the course of their lifetime, it's probably millions of dollars.
But the
question is, what did they do with it?
Oh my God. It's so hard to bring this
up. That's the reality that I see every single day when we talk with clients that come in here sometimes about retirement. It's like, what did you do with all the money that you made? Where did it go?
Yeah, it's really...
it's heavy. It's like the parents that want to send their kids to college, and then they don't save any money for college. And many times the kids have had toys and phones and cars and all these things provided to them growing up. And then they get to college and mom and dad say, sorry, we didn't save anything for you for college, so now you got to take out all these student loans. Most of these young people that I talk to in that situation, they say, why did mom and dad pay for my phone and my car and all this other stuff? Why didn't they take that money and put it in my fund for college? I could have done without those things. But now I need money for college, and I don't have it.
Yeah. Yeah, when I just came to America, I was kind of surprised at how many people are taking student loans. Yeah, because it is not that common in my country, in China, that the parents don't pay for the tuitions of the the higher education. Yeah, usually they pay it, and after it we just get independent and live on our own.
Sure. Well, and one of the challenges here for people living here is, yes, they've spent money on their kids growing up and all of that instead of saving for college. That's one problem. Higher education here is very expensive, and some families can't afford to save for college and to save for retirement. And if the parents pay for college and then they get to the point where they're 65 or 70 years old and they have no money to retire on because they paid for all the college for all the kids, they're sort of stuck. So we often have to tell clients, if you have to pick between paying for college and paying for your retirement, you have to pay for your retirement, and your kids are going to have to figure out how to pay for their college. Because they've got a lot more years to work than you do.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's kind of where we end up, or we'll have to, do something 50-50 or something. You help pay for some, and the kids pay for some. That's usually a better solution as opposed to all or nothing. But it's very hard for many families to be able to do everything for their kids. And sometimes, like I said, instead of encouraging family members or saving for college, or they spend more on their kids growing up than maybe they should.
Yes.
So it becomes it's a balancing act, and it becomes tough. At $75,000 a year, if that's what you're making, it's going to be very tight just to pay for a family with a couple of kids. And you're not going to be able to save a whole lot of money for college on $75,000 a year.
Yeah, so maybe that's really a minimum
That's
threshold.
really a
Yeah.
minimum point, like I said, where people basically start to feel like they can keep their head above water,
Mm.
um, assuming they don't have a huge family or something like that.
Mm.
Um, but yes, that's probably a point at which people start to financially feel better.
Yes. Well,
But
these are all my
below that,
questions.
it's tough. Below that, I'm sure it's very,
Uh,
very tough for people.
yes. Ah, yes. Although I'm, I'm still, I haven't made any budget plan and like investment and like that. But I think I'm gonna start to think about this.
I would say the place to start, if anything else, is just to start taking a month or two and track where your money goes.
Mm.
Start to realize where you spend your money.
Food.
Food,
Yeah.
clothes, whatever it is.
Mm.
And just continue that practice of keeping track. My husband and I sit down at the end of every month and we go through the checking account and we put everything in categories. How much did we spend eating out, groceries, gas, insurance, whatever it is.
Mm.
And we just try to be very conscious about where our money goes.
Mm.
And that's the first step. And once you start to see where the money goes, then you can make decisions. Well, all right, I'm eating out too much. I think I'll stop doing some of that, and that will give me the money to put something away or whatever.
Mm.
And once you get a steady job, the first thing you need to do is have money taken out of your paycheck for whatever retirement plan the company has. Usually there's a tax advantage for doing that. And if the money comes out of your paycheck before it ever hits your bank account, it doesn't get spent.
Mm. Yeah.
You have to put it on automatic pilot so that the money comes out automatically every month and you never see it and you never miss it.
Yeah, that's true.
Because
Indeed.
most of us, if we see money in the account, we'll figure out a way to spend it. I know that's the way it is in my household. I can tell you that right now. The way it is. So if I don't want it spent and I want it designated for the future, I have to put it into something where that will go right in and I don't ever see it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, well, I've got to get going. Is this enough for your story?
Yeah. It's more than enough. It's really insightful, I think. Yeah.
Good.
And thank you so much for sharing with me lots of stories and insights.
Sure, you're very welcome, and I wish you lots of success. I'm sure you'll do very well here.
Thank you.
Have a good day now.
Thank you. And your name is Nancy, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Nancy Ladd, Ladd.
Okay. Thank you.
With Trinity Financial Advisors. Have a wonderful day.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.